Welcome once again to RWR Plays TEW 2020. This, of course, is our WCW Lives On series, Chapter 19 of that series, which explores what might have happened had Eric Bischoff and Fusient Media Ventures successfully purchased WCW in 2001 instead of WWE. And we are now all the way up to week 3 of August in 2001, the go home episode of Nitro before Slamboree. Of course, Slamboree has been moved to August from its traditional May slot in the calendar. In a minute, I'm going to go through what took place on the last episode, but before then, a little nudge in the direction of the subscribe button. If you've been following along up to this point and enjoying the series, then give us a subscribe, and that way you'll be kept up to date with all the latest episodes coming out, and it will also help us as a channel too. Now, what took place on last week's TV taping of both Nitro and Saturday Night? We had the main event of Nitro, which of course was the 300th episode of the show, where Sting and Ric Flair got the slight upset victory over the Steiner brothers when Sting came to Flair's aid on the previous episode, and they bandied together to defeat the Steiner brothers in the main event. The best match, by the way, that we've had so far in the WCW series, an 82 out of 100. Also on the show, the contract was signed for the WCW title match at Slamboree, with Jeff Jarrett introducing his new lawyer Mike Sanders, and the pair plus John Cena attacking Booker T after Penn was put to paper. What's more, Tommy Dreamer earned a shot on the show at the US title at Slamboree by winning a four-way match that also included Curt Hennig, Canyon and Lance Storm. Eric Bischoff made a deal with the Insiders that if they could beat Buff Bagwell and Lex Luger in singles matches on this week's episode of Nitro, they would be granted a rematch for the tag straps at Slamboree, and also promised for this week Team Canada versus Curt Hennig and Bob Eaton, plus Terry Funk speaking about the attack that took him out of a match versus Canyon on Saturday night a couple of weeks ago. So all that to come on this week's episode, and let's go straight to it. So for this week's episode of Nitro and Saturday Night, the TV taping, we are back in the Southwest region as we're at the Associated Feed Pavilion in California. And our dark match for the night is Jeff Jarrett versus Lenny Lane. A decent match here, Jeff Jarrett getting the victory in 5 minutes and 48 seconds by submission with the figure 4 leg lock. Segment rating of 67. This was just a dark match for the crowd to get them warmed up ahead of the show, and also give Jeff Jarrett something to do as he wasn't in action on either of this week's TV shows. So going into Nitro proper now, and we start with a segment where Tony Schiavone is in the ring and welcomes everybody to Nitro, then introduces Ric Flair to the ring for an interview. Before asking him any questions, Schiavone says that he can exclusively reveal to the WCW fans that a new match has been made official for Slamboree on Sunday night. The Nature Boy Ric Flair will go up against his rival Scott Steiner. Schiavone asks Flair how he feels about his chances in the match. Flair says that he knows that Scott Steiner is a very dangerous man. He says he's dangerous on his own without having to worry about his brother getting involved, but he says that the Nature Boy is on a roll and back to his best, and on Sunday, Steiner will find out just what his best is all about. Schiavone asks whether Flair will have backup from Sting during the match. Flair says that he hasn't spoken to Sting since last Monday when they beat the Steiners, but says he hopes he can count on Sting's help to ensure Rick Steiner stays out of the match. Schiavone then wishes him the best of luck at Slamboree and announces that we will be hearing from Sting later on in the show. So segment rating here of 74. Ric Flair continues to be really impressive both on the mic and in the ring. He's doing really well at the moment. Tony Schiavone wasn't particularly good, but that didn't matter. A segment rating here of 74 as the match between Scott Steiner and Ric Flair at Slamboree is announced. After this, we get our first match of the night. It is Vampiro versus Sean O'Haire, and in this one, the match breaks down and ends in a double disqualification when both Jester and Chuck Palumbo become involved 6 days before their tag match with one another at Slamboree. The match lasted 10 minutes and 23 seconds and got a segment rating of 62, which is pretty decent for a double disqualification. Vampiro was a 56, Sean O'Haire a 54, and this continued obviously the feud between these two teams. Vampiro was really off his game during the match. In the post-match, the four men involved in this feud all got into a big brawl, and as the show went to break, they were still fighting one another through the crowd and in the aisleway. When we come back from the break, we're informed by Mike Tenay that officials and referees managed to restore order during the break. And then we have a match between James Maritato and Rey Mysterio Jr., which Rey Mysterio Jr. wins in 9:27 by pinfall. During the match, we also had Johnny the Ball accidentally hit Maritato as he was trying to help him in this one. A really good match, segment rating of 74. Rey Mysterio got an in-ring performance of 82, which is absolutely phenomenal, and James Maritato of 44. But a 74 is a really good contest, one of the best we've had in a non-main event kind of way. So that's really a really promising thing there, that Rey Mysterio Jr. has got the quality to have matches of that level. And hopefully we can take advantage of that as we go on through the series. Next up, we get a pre-recorded segment in a studio that is with Mike Tenay introducing Terry Funk in a sit-down interview. Mike Tenay asks Terry Funk how he's doing following the attack on Saturday Night a couple of weeks ago that kept him from a match with Kanyon. Funk says he's had far worse knocks in his time, though usually it's from people with the guts to face him eye to eye, not jumping him from behind. Tenay then asks who committed the attack, and Funk says that it was Kanyon who attacked him with a steel chair to the back of his head. He says that he didn't see Kanyon, but he knew it was him because only Kanyon wears cologne that smells that bad. Funk then says that he wants to face Kanyon one-on-one on Nitro next week. He says Kanyon should be there if he's got the balls. Segment rating here of 57. You will remember that this kind of story was really only happening as a consequence of the fact that I'd booked Terry Funk in a match with Kanyon for an episode of WCW Saturday Night, and then realised that Funk wasn't contracted to work B shows. So this whole story and this interview is being necessitated by a mistake I made. Therefore, we're just trying to book our way out of it, and they will have a match next week on Nitro. Segment rating of 57, that's pretty decent. We move on to a tag team match between the American Mavericks and then Jim Duggan and Jamie Noble, and this one went for 7 minutes and 50 seconds, and James Storm pinned Jamie Noble while using the ropes for leverage. A segment rating of 47. Chris Harris and James Storm continued to be rebuilt following a period where they were basically used as jobbers, and we're now looking at them with a renewed push. Jamie Noble and Jim Duggan were pretty good, although Jamie Noble was off his game. Next up, another in-ring segment. Tony Schiavone is once again in the ring and welcomes his guest Bill Goldberg at this time. Schiavone says that in 6 days' time, Goldberg has the chance to get his revenge on Shane Douglas. Goldberg says that for 3 months he's been waiting to get his chance for revenge on Douglas, and says that at Slamboree he's not just going to put all that anger to an end, but he's going to end Shane Douglas. Before the interview can continue, however, the franchise players walk to the ring. And they surround the ring in 3 different sides with the 3 different members on each side. However, Chronic, who get in the ring first, failed to get the upper hand on Goldberg, and he spears one after the other in relatively short order. Douglas then backs down as Goldberg calls him into the ring to face him, and Douglas retreats looking worried. So a segment rating here of 60, Goldberg looking pretty good, and this is our final build for the match between Bill Goldberg and Shane Douglas at Slamboree. Next was one of the pre-booked matches of the night. Team Canada taking on Curt Hennig and Bobby Eaton, a team that were thrown together at the last minute after both of them kind of had the same enemy in Team Canada. A decent match. This one went 13 minutes and 1 second, and the Team Canada won it when Lance Storm pinned Bobby Eaton. A segment rating of 66. He was the weak link, but more so because of his lack of popularity in comparison with the others, as opposed to any quality in the ring. But it was a pretty good match anyway. Mike Awesome is 68, Lance Storm 69, Curt Hennig is 63. All pretty good, this stuff. The next segment is Tony Schiavone introducing another guest, this time backstage, the WCW World Champion Booker T. Schiavone asks how Booker T intends to counter the threat posed by not only Jeff Jarrett but his entourage as well after the attack that they perpetrated on him last week during the contract signing. Booker T says that Jarrett can bring his lawyer, can bring his bodyguard, the nanny, the tinker, the tailor, and the candlestick maker if he wants to, but on Sunday he guarantees that the title will remain with him at the end of the night. So this one got a segment rating of 65, just a quick little interview to build finally the match between Booker T and Jeff Jarrett at Slamboree for the WCW title. Next up, one of the two matches in the double header, which will determine whether DDP and Kevin Nash, the insiders, get a title shot for the tag belts at Slamboree. And in this one, Diamond Dallas Page defeated Lex Luger in 13 minutes and 43 seconds by pinfall. Segment rating of 63. DDP had a 68 rating, Luger a 56. You will remember that DDP and Kevin Nash have to win both of these matches on the night to take on Totally Buff for the tag titles at Slamboree. Next up, Tony Schiavone welcomes Sting to the ring for the final interview segment of the night. Schiavone tells Sting that Flair is up against it at Slamboree as he will face Scott Steiner, but there is always the threat of Rick Steiner being in attendance. Schiavone says that earlier tonight Flair asked Sting to be in his corner for the match to make sure Rick is not a factor, and asks Sting what his response is. Sting tells Tony that he doesn't want anybody getting the wrong idea. Ric Flair and him are not friends, and he'd be just as comfortable across the ring from Flair as he would be on his side. But he says that the Steiners are obviously not going to allow this to just be a one-on-one match, and so he will be in Flair's corner at Slamboree. Segment rating here of 73. Tony Schiavone didn't come out of this looking great, but Sting was really good, and Sting has confirmed that he will be in Flair's corner for Flair's match against Scott Steiner at Slamboree. Before the main event, we have Mike Tenay and Jerry the King Lawler quickly discussing some of the things they've seen over the course of the night, and then confirming the matches that will take place at Slamboree. First of all, the cage match as Bill Goldberg faces Shane Douglas. Scott Steiner will take on Ric Flair with Sting in Flair's corner. The Cruiserweight Tag Team titles are on the line as Rey Mysterio Jr. and Billy Kidman take on the FBI. Booker T will face Jeff Jarrett for the WCW World title. Vampiro and Jester will take on Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. Mike Awesome defends the US title against Tommy Dreamer. And just confirmed, Curt Hennig will face Lance Storm. Segment rating here of 59, and that's just to kind of give everyone a last push for pay-per-view buys on this go-home episode of WCW Nitro ahead of Slamboree. And the main event is Kevin Nash versus Buff Bagwell, and is won by Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash defeats Buff Bagwell in 15 minutes and 38 seconds by pinfall. Segment rating of 71, which is a really good match. Kevin Nash is 75, Buff Bagwell is 65. Nash continues to perform really rather well in all of the matches that he's taken part in. And after the match, DDP and Kevin Nash stand in the ring celebrating while the commentators confirm that they will now face Totally Buff on Sunday with the WCW World Tag Team titles on the line. A segment rating here of 72 to finish off the show, and a very strong way to finish the show. I thought this was a little bit of a nothingy show, if I'm honest. It's funny, as I'm going through the show and talking to you about them, even though there were some good matches, I felt like storyline wise we'd already kind of got to the point where we were ready for Slamboree in a lot of places, like for example with the Booker T and Jeff Jarrett match. Like all the build that I wanted to happen before the match took place in time for the last show, and that's merely the reason for that is because we had 5 weeks of build between the Bash at the Beach and this Slamboree pay-per-view, and so we kind of reached our destination in terms of the ends or the sort of peaks, I guess, of these stories a week early. And so in some ways this was a bit of a filler episode, but we were able to fill it with some decent stuff, in particular the sort of matches to determine whether or not the Insiders got their tag team title shot, which gave us some decent main event level matches. And of course a really good match between Rey Mysterio Jr. and James Maritato as well on the show, which was match of the night. So in general, I'm pretty happy. We increased our popularity in all the regions that we hoped we would, and that's pretty decent. We got to be pleased with that as we enter Slamboree in 6 days' time. Before we end this episode, though, and then obviously get to Slamboree in the next episode, we've still got the small matter of WCW Saturday Night to book and cover, so we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so we're on to Saturday night, and you can see now that the attendance for the TV taping on this night is 2,447, which is pretty healthy. And Saturday night begins with Konnan defeating Steve Wild, a jobber basically, 5:34 by submission. Segment rating here of 58. Konnan was really good with a 62, but Steve Wild not so good, and Konnan actually was off his game, so potentially Konnan can be even better than he was in this one. Next up, Naohiro Hoshikawa and Ryo Saito are introduced to the WCW audience with a hype video basically, showing them in action from All Japan Pro Wrestling, which is their regular home. And This gave a segment rating of 20. So basically, Hoshikawa and Ryo Saito here debuting in the company ahead of their match, which is up against Lash LaRue and Jason Jett in a bout their terrible wrestling and non-existing crowd heat. Naohiro Hoshikawa and Ryo Saito defeated Lash LaRue and Jason Jett when Ryo Saito pinned Jason Jett in 7:52. A segment rating of 31, and you can see there Saito a 37, Hoshikawa a 26. Not too bad given that they've not got any real popularity in the US at all. And Jason Jett 40, Lash LaRue 34. We're introducing Hoshikawa and Saito. They're the first of the wrestlers that we've done a deal for to bring in from All Japan. Basically, as our part of our talent trade agreement, we've managed to sign with them, and they've come in and had a decent match. They're going to go into our cruiserweight tag team division. In the next segment, Sharmell Sullivan, for the first time, did an interview segment. She interviewed Tommy Dreamer here about his upcoming match with Mike Awesome at Slamboree for the US title. And Tommy Dreamer says that he hasn't forgotten what Mike Awesome did to ECW just over a year ago, and he was going to make Mike Awesome pay for that. A segment rating of 43. Tommy Dreamer clearly enjoyed having the freedom to go off script and perform well, but Sharmell Sullivan struggled when going off script. Sullivan, we're trying out a couple of other people in this secondary interview role because Scott Hudson just isn't capable of doing it well. So perhaps got to give Sharmell Sullivan a few more chances yet, but not a great start for her. In the next match, we had a 6-women tag team match as Alexis Lurie, Angel Orsini, and Jillian Hall took on Amber O'Neil, Jazz, and Kana. And this one went for only 6 minutes and 12 seconds and had Kana pin Angel Orsini. A segment rating of 21, so not bad. And you can see some of the women are actually creeping up in terms of their performances. Kana had a 32, Jazz a 27, Alexis Lurie 26, and Angel Orsini a 27. None of them in single digits, which is really good. But still, these women are all seen as still relatively unimportant, so they're not exactly getting the crowd overly hyped when they come out in front of them. We also then had Mark Jindrak and Sean Stasiak take on another couple of jobbers, Al Smith and John Black. This one went 6 minutes and 46 seconds, and Jindrak pinned Smith. Jindrak and Stasiak are 41 and a 45. John Black a 31, but Al Smith only a 17. Doesn't really matter. Again, this is just a B show anyway, Saturday night. Just a way to get people some victories, basically. And then we had Sharmell Sullivan with Jeff Jarrett, John Cena, and Mike Sanders for an interview. In this particular interview, Jeff Jarrett says that he is the champion-elect, and his administration, John Cena and Mike Sanders, are preparing for a win. Segment rating here, 49. Jeff Jarrett was the real star in the segment, and Sharmell Sullivan this time enjoyed having the freedom to go off script and perform well. So yeah, this is just Jeff Jarrett's last bit of hype for his match with Booker T at Slamboree for the title. Then the main event saw Steiner Brothers defeat Ernest Miller and Ice Train in 11:55 when Rick Steiner pinned Ice Train. And Rick Steiner had a 74. Scott Steiner, though, an in-ring performance of 98. So he's just getting stronger and stronger all the time. Looking forward to what he can do with Ric Flair at Slamboree. Ice Train only a 22. Ernest Miller a 44. A segment rating of 56, so a decent end to a nothingy show, but that's what Saturday night's going to be in the main, although I think next month there might be some interesting things that are going to take place on the show. But anyway, overall rating of 52, pretty happy with that. As I say, the attendance was 2,447. So that was the go-home TV taping prior to Slamboree. As I say, it was a bit of a strange one. I think that there was some good stuff on the episode of Nitro that we did, but I still feel like we kind of got to the end of our build for Slamboree maybe a week early, and we were kind of just almost trying to fill time a lot of the time during this episode of Nitro. But hopefully that won't be such a problem in the future, because we're very close now to being in a place where all of our pay-per-views are coming in week 4 of the month, as was originally the plan. I've only got one more pay-per-view where I need to do a 5-week build, and then we will be right on course for that. Interesting here, there's a new tag team in WWF, Raven and William Regal, one of the more unique tag teams I would imagine. Dangerous by Design is the name of the tag team. That's one of the game generated names that are obviously a little bit rubbish most of the time. And WWF drew 15,000 fans to Raw. Let's just have a look. Oh, not so great. Show rating 76. The Rock defeated Scott Vick in the main event. I don't even know who Scott Vick is. Who is Scott Vick? Oh, Sick Boy from WCW from a long time ago. Okay, fine. So, fine, whatever. Rock defeats Sick Boy in the main event of the show. Goldust defeated Matt Hardy for the European title. Okay, fine. But that is the end of this episode. If you've liked it, please give us a like down below. And also, as I said at the beginning of the show, give us a subscribe, if only because you'll then get to hear about the fact that the Slamboree episode is out. That will be the next thing that we'll be posting. And it's quite a big stacked card, so I'm looking forward to seeing what will happen there. Until we give you that show, though, that is all for today. Thank you very much for watching.